everything has a price. Clothes, books, the chair you're sitting in right now. And they're all measured using money, dollars. Although when it comes to food, I've always thought about it using a slightly different system. A bag of chips might be $2, depending on how much the vending machine is ripping you off, but it's also 200 calories. A jar of peanut butter might be $6, and at the same time, it's far more than 3 times the price of chips. And a spoonful isn't worth counting. Still, I wonder how much it is. I don't bring this up as an introduction to personal finances, but to eating disorders. As I've said that, some of you might be thinking right now, she's not skinny enough to have an eating disorder. Well, I feel the exact same way. Unfortunately, many have conditioned themselves to think, oh, mine isn't as bad as theirs, therefore I don't have a problem, without realizing that is the problem, the notion of not being sick enough for treatment, even though the size of one's body isn't what determines the sickness. It's driven by a number of factors, not necessarily starving oneself to look pretty. I'd also like to make it clear first that I'm no expert. What I intend to do today is simply open a door to the fact that there are so many different experiences. It's difficult for me to encapsulate them all in these few minutes I have to speak, nor would I be able to, because that is not my experience. My goal is awareness of the obstacles people face, and to give you some food for thought. To start, let's do some brainstorming. What even is the solution to disordered eating? Oh, just eat. And binge eating? Don't eat. If you're too fat, too slim, just do this and this and this. If you struggle with ARFID, which is where typically neurodivergent people have issues with the texture of food and are downplayed as being picky eaters, get over it. It's like telling a non-English speaker to just speak English, or instructing a depressed individual to be happy. It's not a switch someone can shut off for the rest of their life after realizing they're suffering. People struggle, acceptance of that fact being another difficulty in itself, and it is our duty to recognize this in making treatment more effective. As really, that's all someone may need, the willingness to be seen and understood so they can finally see themselves. Some cultures, for example, the Hispanic community, place a big emphasis on eating and sharing food. On the other hand, a project done by the University of Nevada investigated the 15 common resources found when Googling eating disorder Latina. And among them includes a quotation that states, "It's not uncommon to hear, upon seeing relatives for the first time in a while, te ves gordita." The translation of that is, "You look chubby." Then, in African American communities, a curvy body is really the most desirable appearance. And according to the UNC Nutrition Research Institute, Black people are more likely to suffer from binge eating disorder and bulimia, the latter characterized by cycles of overeating and self-induced vomiting. The importance of these facts I just threw at you is that they show us we must consider that the experience of non-white populations is shaped by elements significantly different from the white population, as many don't consider it at all. And due to years and years of ingrained fear and neglect, these people are discouraged from speaking up. There's no reassurance they'll be heard. That is the purpose of making medical conversations as inclusive as possible, partly to destigmatize needing help and anyone who hasn't been offered it. There isn't much information on how marginalized communities are affected by disordered eating and mental illnesses overall, and I'd like to share the following excerpt of a well-known book I came across when looking further into this work. Crazy Like Us, The Globalization of the American Psyche. It states in the first chapter, most of the Hong Kong anorexics Sing Lee was able to interview denied any fear of being fat or of intending to lose weight to become more attractive. When explaining the refusal to eat, they most often ascribed the behavior to physical causes such as bloating, blockages in their throat or digestion, or the feeling of fullness in their stomach and abdomen. This is a very interesting case when examining why eating disorders occur. Here, Sing Lee was looking to understand the experience of Hong Kong anorexics as opposed to those he encountered when studying in England, in the West. The demographic in question is described as having developed these eating patterns not in wanting to adhere to East Asian beauty standards, but because their bodies reject the food out of physical discomfort. We like to pin the blame on social media and influencers, yet the causes don't always fit this expectation, nor should we try and make them fit this expectation. One step towards increasing the accessibility of recovery methods is to talk about this topic and how certain medications aren't applicable to every situation. And that's why I've decided to talk about it. I mean, when I first said the word eating disorder, what image popped into your head? Was it a malnourished young girl? Despite the major demographic that suffers from eating disorders being those who identify as LGBTQ and up. An example is that non-binary people are found to strive for an unattainably skinny physique as validation of who they are, and thus they engage in very strict weight control to seem more androgynous. Furthermore, men tend to be overlooked in the discussion of eating disorders, for having such an illness translates to the general public as trying to be skinny, and being skinny is associated with femininity. So, people who identify as men often remain silent to avoid backlash, embarrassment, or simply because they feel they aren't allowed to have such an illness. Now, I could write a 20-page research report on all this, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I just want this to be something considered in the medical field after years and years of not considering it, especially given that this awareness is needed, and it can't be solved even with the rapid advancement of technology. We're people, aren't we? And we need people to help us. While the common cold may have a concrete remedy, drink some tea, get enough vitamin C, eating disorders don't just go away with the whoosh of a hand. And there could be a million descriptions for what having one looks like, while only making it all the more undefinable. For me, it meant I couldn't see past the nutrition label to my heart that would give out if I didn't look away. For me, there was, and still is sometimes, so much around it's overwhelming. And the day depended on breakfast, lunch, dinner, and getting from one to the next. For me, I couldn't dream because my mind was clouded by calories. As for you, the best way of addressing this issue is simply to start by acknowledging there's rarely ever one solution, and even then, that everyone has a different approach. Thank you.